Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you're new, my name is Chris. Welcome to tonight's video, which is a super exciting video for me because it involves one of my very favorite notes, incense. Even though incense-based fragrances can be worn all year round, my favorite time to wear them is right now during the cold weather, and I will continue to wear them until at least May, which is when it starts to warm up where I live. To clear up a little bit of confusion as to what incense actually is, I'm going to refer to my handy dandy book on incense. And the definition is very broad and remarkably simple. So here it is. Put simply, incense is anything you burn for its scent. That's a pretty broad definition, but it's accurate. The two key concepts that define incense are burn and scent. All true incense must include both of those factors. Burning leaves are incense for some people, and firewood fits this definition for others. It doesn't take 25 secret herbs blended by an incense maker to make a fantastic incense, and that is very true. In fact, one of my favorite forms of incense to burn right now is, I like to burn Palo Santo sticks right here. They have a really lovely scent. You light the end on fire, you blow it out. You rest it at an angle on a plate and it smokes. I find that scent very comforting as long as I'm in a big room. Incense has been used over many thousands of years over 7 different cultures for religious and non-religious reasons with regards to healing and spirituality. And I will say one of the forms of incense I'm most familiar with is basically the churchy incense, liturgical incense. And it's a scent that I really look forward to when it's utilized in religious ceremony. Being a practicing Catholic, that's usually at least twice a year, Christmas and Easter. But anyways, I find incense very soothing. I find incense one of the most comforting scents in perfume and perfume-related products. And I have a huge box of fragrances sitting next to me with a prominent note of incense. So I'm gonna jump right in. So let's start with an incense that is great for the cold weather and also is very hyped up right now, and that is Encens Suave right here. Oh my gosh. So this is I would describe this as a gourmand type of incense. This incense to me is very churchy. It's very liturgical, but it also has a lot of really warm gourmand notes as well. There's a heavy frankincense note, so it's a little smoky. It's a little bit green. The frankincense is very strong. When people smell frankincense, they tend to think of like church incense. So it is pretty strong in here. This incense is also very sweet and resinous, and there's like a coffee, almost like a chocolate flavored coffee to me. And as it dries down, it's sweet. It gets vanilla, very heavy, almost to the point of being syrupy. So it's the type of incense fragrance that I love to wear when it's cold, particularly when it's freezing cold or snowing. But I don't wear in the summer. I do wear some of these fragrances in the summer. Some of them are better suited for the summer. Encens Suave, in my opinion, is not, at least where I live. It's great for right now. And this is a beast. I can think of 2 fragrances right now from this line that are just absolute beast mode performers. Encens Suave is one of them. It will last all day. The next fragrance is aptly named Gold Incense, and it's by Carolina Herrera, the Confidential line. This is more of an ambery labdanum concoction with some incense. And labdanum is a note that smells sweet and leathery. This also is very woody. There is cinnamon in here, there's labdanum, there's a little bit of incense. It's not super smoky, but it's a little bit smoky. It's very woody. I definitely get kind of the wood in here does smell like it is a baby oud, but I don't think oud is in here. I want to say cedar and sandalwood, but it does smell just a touch oudy. It's probably with the other notes mixed in there. And the performance on these Carolina Herreras is out of this world. These are powerhouses. Everyone in this line. Do not do more than a handful of sprays or you will live to regret it. This is a lovely ambery woody fragrance with incense in it. The next one is a fragrance that I haven't spoken about in a long time. And it's by a line that I don't really hear anybody else talk about. But I've spoken about these fragrances several different times. I think I have now 4 full bottles. It's by Regime de Fleurs, and this one is Falling Trees. This is one of 2 incense fragrances from the list that I would most enjoy smelling on a man or my spouse. I think this one does definitely lean masculine, although I really enjoy wearing it as well, but it typically has to be really cold. This is very woody, very spicy, very earthy, and very smoky. So the type of wood in here is oak, and I don't have a ton of fragrances which feature the note of oak, and oak is pretty prominent in here. Oop! Yes, it's very spicy. This one I believe has cypriol oil in it, and once you smell cypriol oil, you'll pretty much remember it because it's very earthy. It's a little bit green and it's very spicy. I find that it lends a very spicy earthiness to fragrances when it is in the mix. This one is a touch green. I think this has frankincense in it. And I enjoy this one because this also is pretty realistic. It reminds me of the outdoors. It would be likable to someone who really enjoys the outdoors because it's very earthy, warm and green and spicy. My husband enjoys this, but the one thing he doesn't like about it is that it doesn't have great lasting power, which is pretty surprising because when you put it on, it seems like it's going to be kind of overwhelming because the notes read just a little bit heavy. You know, they're heavy, they're smoky, they're spicy, they're earthy, but it doesn't really last all day. I would say this is a mild to moderate performer, like maybe 4 to 6 hours at most. Unless you spray it on clothes, you might get longer, but there's just something about this fragrance that I absolutely adore, and it really speaks to me. The next fragrance is a beautiful fragrance by PENHALIGONS that has incense in it, but it's not overly incensey. It has a lot of other notes going on, and it is the Bewitching Yasmine. This is another incense-based fragrance that has prominent coffee in it. So this is coffee, it's spicy, there's cardamom, there's definitely oud in here, but it is an easy oud. I think it's a Laotian oud, not animalic at all, and just a touch smoky. It's very sweet, so there's vanilla in here. And it does have jasmine, so there are white florals. There may be there's jasmine and I think something else, but it's not really overly floral. I mean, if I didn't know that jasmine was in here, I'm not sure I could pick out jasmine individually. Although if I had to guess a flower, I would guess jasmine. There is an evergreen note, I wanna say fir, which I think is nice because it is a sweet fragrance. There is a lot of vanilla and the coffee gives it some sweetness. The fir, I think, counterbalances it and keeps it out of the too sweet zone. As this dries down and some of the notes fade, it does turn into a warm, rich, spicy, incensey vanilla. Another one that is not a powerhouse. You look at the juice, you hear the notes, you think it's going to be a big powerhouse, last forever. Surprisingly not. I would say this is a mild to moderate performer, but I love this and I don't wear it as much as I should. This is definitely something I would wear dressed up. If you have been with me for a while, you know the next fragrance in my hand is one of my all-time favorite fragrances, and it is a fragrance that one of my early subscribers, who's now a friend, recommended to me I'm not gonna say years and years ago, I've only been doing this for 2 years, around when I started, and it is my Caftan. I just love this fragrance. This, in so many ways, is really me in a bottle. It's an amber fragrance. It's a little bit smoky. It's balsamic. It's sweet. And of course, it's incensey. But it has this really nice, mild brightness in the beginning. There's tangerine and I want to say pink pepper. Oh my gosh, I'm going to spray it. It's so pretty. This has a very heavy benzoin sweetness to it. And the incense in here is smoky. It reads more smoky. So slightly liturgical, but not overly so. Again, another fragrance that when you look at the juice, you're thinking this is going to be very loud, very strong, very long lasting. I would put this as a moderate performer. I adore this fragrance. I wear it all year round. This is date night in the summer. This is one of my all year round incense fragrances, and it's more of a date night scent for me. This could be a signature scent because I would wear it. I can't think of a scenario I wouldn't wear it. Maybe not 100 degrees hiking. It would be a little bit fancy for that. But pretty much any situation I would wear it in. Caftan, one of my all-time favorite fragrances that has a beautiful, mild, smoky incense. This next fragrance I just spoke about in my 22 best pickups of 22, so I'm not gonna dilly-dally that much. And it's Basilica. This one is gourmand, in my opinion. It leans gourmand, but it's not the type of gourmand you're thinking. There are some savory aspects to it. It's got like thyme and rosemary, which gives it like this green earthiness. It's very chewy. It's a very chewy incense. It's a very chewy fragrance. The incense is liturgical. It's a churchy type of incense, but there is milk in here. It's lactonic. And I think the milk in here gives it a sweetness because it does get sweeter in the dry down, and it's kind of sweet and creamy to me. One of my favorite incense fragrances right now. I love wearing it. The bottle is beautiful. And for what you get, this is a huge you know, 100 ml bottle. And for it being a niche, an Italian niche brand, I want to say this is reasonably priced. I mean, the prices of some of these fragrances of late are going like $300 for a 50 ml bottle. This is just over $100, I want to say. It's less than $150 for a 100 ml bottle. I understand that's expensive, but for what you get, I enjoy it because this has great performance. I love it. One of my favorite incense fragrances right now. In fact, I think I'm gonna spray it on right now. I'm not wearing anything. This will be my scent of the day. The next fragrance is a fragrance that I love, but I may not be able to talk about it very much in the future because not only has it been pretty hard to, almost near impossible to acquire, I heard it's being discontinued. I mean, which would be a real shame because it's a beautiful fragrance and it is Babycat by Yves Saint Laurent. This to me is an incensey vanilla with leather and saffron. The opening is very peppery. It has a very peppery opening and then it slides real quickly into incense. The incense is smoky, it's a little churchy, it's sweet. And as this dries down, you can get the saffron. The saffron is spicy. The saffron comes out pretty quickly as well. Spicy, it's leathery, and as it dries down into a beautiful, sweet, rich vanilla suede fragrance. And you can still detect the incense in the dry down. The leather's there. I think it's suede, actually. The suede is there, but it's very dry. It's a very dry, I would call it a dry, clean type of a suede. If you hate leather, you hate suede, you're probably not gonna be a fan of this. But if you can take some leather, some suede, and if you enjoy that type of a note or accord and vanilla, this is just so incredibly beautiful. The dry down is where it's at. I mean, I love all parts of this fragrance, but the dry down is unbelievable because it gets sweeter and that vanilla is just gorgeous. On me, this thing is so tenacious. This thing has amazing lasting power. Hopefully it's not discontinued. That would be a darn shame. So it would only make sense that once I spoke about Babycat, I speak about the fragrance with which it is compared most to, which is Vanagloria, and it's an amazing Italian line. So I have seen people comment on my videos that this is a one-to-one dupe or substitution for Babycat. If you spray them on paper or you don't spray them side by side or wear them side by side, I can see how one would come to that conclusion. However, I did a 7-day side-by-side where I wore these side-by-side, one on each arm for 7 days. And in doing that, I was able to pick out some differences. Some of them were quite big. These two fragrances are very similar in their heart, but I find that there are some big differences in the opening and definitely in the dry down. The opening of this reminds me, if you took like an incense stick, like a stick of wood, if you took some sort of wood, you got the tip wet, you dipped that in sugar, and then you burned it. So wet wood, burning has a very particular smell. When straight sugar cane burns, it has a particular smell. So the opening to me is a wet wood dipped in sugar and lit on fire. It has a burning type of a smell. Not quite into the burned rubber territory, but it's heading in that direction. I don't get that at all in the opening of Babycat. Babycat's more peppery and more spicy with the saffron. When this one gets into the heart of the fragrance, the two are very similar. It does become a sweet, smoky, incensey vanilla. And the dry downs are very, very different. Like the deep dry down, this thing is gone. And I mean completely gone, undetectable at 6 hours, where for me, Babycat is going strong. And I actually tested that with friends, family, and even my hairdresser. Every single person could detect a difference at hour, 4, 5, and 6. And for me, this one was gone. I know it's a legit bottle. I bought it from Ministry of Scents. I can assure you a lot of people would probably prefer this to Babycat, and that would be a great thing. Right now, I still prefer Babycat because the dry down has that beautiful sweetness that I love, and it's not as sweet in the dry down for here. Both of them are really nice. Both of them are great fragrances. But if I had to choose one, I would choose Babycat. But thank you, Vanagloria. We appreciate you for being available. The next fragrance is one of the most unique fragrances in my collection. And when I first tested on a piece of paper in the summer, it was like a big giant no. And when you look at the notes, it just looks like it's gonna be a hot mess. I'm glad I kept testing because this fragrance, more than any fragrance I can think of right now, really does a transformation on skin. It is called Wish Come True. It's a soapy, slightly floral, aldehydic incense fragrance with leathery, ambery touches that dries down sweet and vanillic. This is a very salty perfume. This is one of the saltiest perfumes I own, and this one is a shapeshifter. It really changes during the wear of the fragrance. Incense is definitely present, and I would say it's smoky, slightly liturgical, just a little bit of a frankincense-y thing, but mostly smoky. Smoky, salty, floral, slightly soapy, and sweet in the dry down. This is another one I would absolutely never blind buy because I think it's a love or a hate. Very unusual, and I have it in my collection because it's super unique. The next fragrance is a fragrance called Wood, and it is by the House of Maisa, one of my favorite houses that I discovered last year. I purchased their Discovery Coffret, and this one was my favorite from the Coffret, so much so that I ended up purchasing a bottle, but this is very much a woody vanilla with incense. It's a very fresh take on incense and one of the few fragrances in here that I definitely would wear year-round, including the hot summer months or the warmer months. So the opening's very, very green and fresh, bordering on being bitter. It's a little bit herbal. It's the only part that's not my very favorite, but that fades very, very quickly. It's still green. There's some sort of herb, maybe it's Artemisia. It's very fresh, very citrusy. There's orange in here and mint. And then as it dries down, the incense comes out. Then it becomes this woody vanilla incensey fragrance that is probably my favorite combination of notes right now. I love these woody, vanillic, incensey fragrances. So like most of these woody vanilla fragrances with incense, it does get sweeter in the dry down. And I don't think there are woods listed in the note profile, but I definitely, to me, it reads like a woody vanilla. As far as the type of wood in here, I don't know, but it definitely, it's a clean wood. It's clean, woody, vanillic, fresh, and incensey, and I absolutely adore it. And I have the travel spray and I keep that in my purse. I remember when I was testing this fragrance out in my room and I was wearing it, and I'd sprayed it maybe 30 minutes prior, and my daughter walked in the room and she said, "Oh, Mom, you smell so good. What are you wearing?" And I remember I was wearing this fragrance and I sprayed her, and she went on to do whatever activity she did, and she really enjoyed it. I love so many in this line. There are very few that I don't enjoy, this being one of my favorite, and their gourmands are just basically out of this world, but one of my favorite incensey fragrances right now. And this next fragrance isn't really a incense heavy fragrance, but I had to mention it because I love it. I've mentioned it a gajillion times. It's getting a lot of airtime here on YouTube, and it has a fun note of mystical incense, which I believe the perfume house kind of created that note. And it's Blanche Bete, which is a very milky fragrance to me. To me, it's like you took delicate white flowers, like a tuberose, dipped it in coconut oil, dusted it with cacao, you know, sprinkled it with some mystical incense, and then everything swimming in this really pretty botanical musk. The interesting thing is that this thing really is strong on me. So much so that when I wore this in the summertime a couple times, it was just too overwhelming. It almost choked me out. I stopped wearing it. I put it away until the colder months. And I enjoy it a lot more right now because it's just perfect. It's not overwhelming. And I've had people in the comments here and on Instagram tell me that it doesn't last very long on them, which I mean, listen, everybody smells things differently, but this one fortunately is a very strong performer on me. So I go light and easy on the trigger, particularly now I know in the warmer months to take it easy with this one. But a fragrance that is getting a lot of attention, that has a fun note of mystical incense. I have a lot of incense fragrances. The next one I don't think I've ever spoken about before. This one is an all-year-round fragrance. This is an all-year-round incense fragrance, one of the few that I do wear in the warmer months. It is by the House of HEELEY. It's called Cardinal, and for 2 years in a row, this was actually my midnight mass fragrance I wore for Christmas Eve. It just, I mean, the name, hello, how could I not? But, oh my gosh, this is, yeah. This is a beautiful churchy incense right before it gets burned. This is frankincense and myrrh and a slight touch of soapy sweetness. Like you just took a few shavings of soap and just kind of sprinkled it on this incense right before it got smoked. There is something clean about this as well, and I think there's a note of linen in here. I haven't looked up the notes in a long, long time. But I want to say there's a note of linen, so it's clean, maybe a little bit cottony, slightly fresh, a little bit soapy, slightly sweet. Pristine incense, almost in its natural form, so I just love this fragrance. It's fresh enough and light enough that I wear it year round, so I'm gonna wear you tomorrow. So I had to take a break because my dogs were barking, and when I came back in, can I just say how good it smells in here with the incense perfume I sprayed and also the candles I'm burning and me. Ugh, it's just heaven in this room. But speaking of churchy incense, one of the churchiest incense fragrance I own is Full Incense by Montal. My gosh, this is straight up 100% churchy incense. This is like Catholic incense. Yeah, it's fresh, but it also has this very smoky quality to it and very heavy on the frankincense. So frankincense is a resin which comes from a tree. In my opinion, frankincense smells like very piney. It can smell like pine. It's very green, a little bit sweet, slightly terpenic. Yeah, but this is very prominent on the frankincense or the olibanum. There's also elemi resin in here, which is also another resin that to me smells, it's a little bit green, it's fresh, it smells very woody and almost has a little bit, sometimes it has a little lemony touch, but as it dries down, it gets more sweet. It's a little bit balsamic, sweet, piney, balsamic, and resinous. And there's also patchouli in the dry down, which gives it just a little bit earthiness. This is one of my powerhouse fragrances. If you spray this on clothes, this is gonna last you 24 hours. Not many people, I don't think this is a very popular fragrance. In fact, I've never seen anyone else talk about it. You have to be an incense lover. You have to love straight up, you know, liturgical, churchy incense, and you have to enjoy it being fairly strong. But yeah, I'm an incense lover, and that's why it's in my collection. And the next fragrance up is a delicious incense perfume I found while I was in Italy, because this is an Italian line. Oh gosh. Guys, I am in total heaven with all these fragrances. So this is by the Merchant of Venice, and this is called Mystic Incense. Is it mystic or mystical? Ooh. Oh, this is so delicious. Maybe I'll wear this tomorrow. So this is a delicious incense with some gourmand notes. There's dried fruit. This has a real delicious sweetness from caramel. So there's caramel, dried fruit. This has salt. I want to say there's cacao in here. Is it coffee? No, it's cacao, and some woodiness. So in many ways, the incense in here reminds me of the incense in Encens Suave. I think portions of these fragrances, I think the incense in here is very similar because the incense is sweet and it's smoky. This one has coffee, this one has cacao and dried fruits, but they are gourmand forms of an incense fragrance that I just love. And the salt in here gives it just a touch of, I think the salt in here is nice. Just like salt goes well in fudge, it's just a nice addition to this fragrance, kind of counterbalance some of the sweeter notes in here. So it's not really cloyingly sweet, but I definitely get a little hint of salt. Maybe this has a sugar cube in here too. This is spicy. There are some spices in here, probably pepper, and the spices that are in here kind of remind me of the spices that are in Le du Desert Marocain. A very interesting, very complex, non-linear incense fragrance that really has a lot of facets. It's the opposite of boring. It's quite lovely. It's very incensey, but it has some gourmand notes to satisfy the gourmand lover. But the salt in here I think keeps it from being too sweet. Absolutely adore it. This is an inexpensive substitution for Encens Suave in many ways. It's not a one-to-one substitution, but they're both really gorgeous gourmandy incense fragrances that share a lot of similarities. And this one, I want to say you can get it on the gray market for around $100, whereas Encens Suave is much more expensive than that, but love it. So we're down to the last three, and the next one is a fragrance I picked up this year. It's called Mushin Japanese Incense by MELEG Perfumes. This one is another super unique take on incense. I did a sample swap with the beautiful Anna Lauren, and when I smelled this, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm getting a bottle of that. The backstory to this fragrance is the owner of the brand, I want to say is Matthew MELEG. He used to live in Japan, Kyoto. And in Kyoto, I think this is the city of temples. There's thousands and thousands of temples in the city of Kyoto. He wanted to recreate the aroma of walking around in the Japanese gardens and in the background smelling the incense coming from these temples. And thus he created this fragrance. So apparently in the temples in Kyoto, they burn a very particular type of incense. And I think another reason that he came up with this fragrance is because he wanted it to be used for those who were suffering from PTSD. And I believe Mushin translates into mental clarity. So this is a very smoky, woody incense with some sweetness, because I think there's osmanthus in here, which adds just a touch of sweetness, or it offsets the smokiness that is in here. This is not a sweet fragrance. This is 100% an incense fragrance with some interesting sweetness. When I smell it, I don't think of a churchy type of incense, more of the incense that one smells when they're burning like a stick of Palo Santo. It's a very beautiful, unique, natural take on a smoky wood form of incense as opposed to a churchy, liturgical type of incense, and I just absolutely adore this one. And we're down to the last two. The second to last one is one by Scents of Wood, and this is called Sandalwood in Oak. Gosh, I love this. I really do want to get a full bottle. I love it when fragrance companies have these little travel sprays, because with the size of my collection, I don't need a full bottle of everything. But I do think there are 3 in this line that are definitely full bottle worthy, this being one of them. So the concept behind this fragrance was a perfume as a source of healing. So the idea was to take sandalwood and frankincense, which over time, for millennia, have been used in processes of healing, both religious and non, and bring them together to create a peaceful scent. They added a touch of smokiness in here, and smoke was supposed to be the bridge to heaven, or to the heavens. There's vanilla in here, definitely. As it dries down, gets it a little bit sweet. There are some mineral notes in here, which is not a note you see a lot, are used to help bridge some of these more ancient notes and bring it in the current times, make it timeless and contemporary. And oh my gosh, another one that I just absolutely love. I love this. A beautiful, unique take on incense, which merges the old with the new. I love it. And the last one is my least favorite fragrance in the bunch. It is, to me, the one that absolutely leans the most masculine. And I love wearing fragrances that are masculine marketed. I don't really care. I just go for what it smells like. This one is not a Chris fragrance, but I love to smell it on a man. And this is called Trois by DIPTYQUE. Very aromatic. Oh my gosh. So this has a strong, I can smell it right away, strong note of myrrh. Sometimes myrrh can come off very medicinal, and to me it does come off a little medicinal in here. There's also caraway seed in here, which I think the medicinal myrrh and the caraway definitely give it a masculine quality, but keep it from being a love for me or appropriate for me. There's pine, there's spices in here. It's very piney, very earthy, very aromatic, and something that I love to smell on my husband. To me, this is like a man who's been out in the woods, you know, fishing, maybe hunting, fishing, sitting by the campfire, cooking some meat. All the aromas of the outdoors and living in the outdoors are kind of infused in your clothing, and that's kind of what this smells like. So in the right setting, a fantastic incense fragrance, but not a fragrance for me. And that was it. That was a lot of incense fragrances, but I love it. And I'm going to take all my blotters here that smell so good. I'm going to turn off the camera and put them in my car before I film the next one, but because it just smells so magical in here. But anyways, thank you to those who, I know incense isn't a super popular note in fragrances, and in general, there's a reason why there aren't any designer fragrances that I can think of that have a heavy note of incense, because it's not as a whole very universally appealing. But for people like me who adore the note, it's one of those notes that I just don't want to live without in a fragrance. Thank you for those who stuck around. Thank you for those who watched and asked me to do this video. I'm glad to see that there are other incense lovers like myself, and Don't forget about the giveaway for the Navitus Parfums Raised Spirits. I'm gonna let this go for like a week and a half because I know a lot of my subscribers are busy and can't get to a video right away. So make sure if you're interested in that, you let me know in the comments. And with that, I will see you for the next video, which is in about 5 minutes. You wanna make a cameo?
Oh, Joey asked if we need a hand model.
You want a hand model, Joey? Here, you can hand me this, Joey. You can hand me my next incense. I have a helper. It's right there. I have a helper for my next fragrance. You want to say hi? You guys want to say hi? You could be famous. This is guaranteed to get tens and tens of views.